morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. I would like to welcome everyone today. I am President Irene Bustamante Adams, and I call the special board meeting of May 19th, 2025 to order. The time is 5 p.m. I would like to remind everyone to silence your electronic devices. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the territorial homeland of the Niuwu, the Moapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. For the opening item, the flag salute, I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Cavazos. Can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 1.02. Before I open that item, is there anyone who did not get a chance to complete a public speaker card? If not, please do so. Okay. Ms. Caitlin, can you see if that item is 1.02? And if not, we'll move on. All right, seeing none, then we'll close that item for 1.02, any public comment cards. I'll turn it over to Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Trustee Cavazos?
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you. I have a first and a second. Can you please cast your votes? That motion passes 7-0. Now I'm going to open up item number 2.01. It's our public hearing for the fiscal year 2026 tentative budget. Is there anyone that has not completed a public speaker card? Okay. Seeing none, then I will close the public speaker card section. This is the time and place that was advertised for the public hearing on the tentative budget per Nevada Revised Statute NRS 354.596. An interested person shall be given an opportunity to be heard concerning the fiscal year 2026 tentative budget of the Clark County School District. So I'm opening up the hearing. Seeing none, I will then close the public hearing for item 2.02. We're going to next move on to our item 2.01. Now we're going to move to 2.02, the fiscal year 2026 final budget. Is there anyone who did not get a chance to complete a public card for this section? Okay, seeing none, then I'll close that and turn it over to our two presenters.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, Kelly Cowell-Paul for the record. Ms. Bartholomew and I are here this afternoon to present to you the district's fiscal year 2026 final budget. We've prepared this presentation of the final budget to provide you with an overview of the budget as it is represented in the required state forms. Along with this presentation in English and Spanish, you will find those state forms included as reference D, and a summary of staff recommendation to approve the final budget, accompanied by a summary of the few changes from tentative budget to final budget included as reference A. As in our very recent tentative budget presentation, I will begin by providing the context of the final budget, and then Ms. Bartholomew, our interim chief financial officer, will provide the detail of the recommended budget. During my overview, I will quickly run through how the final budget fits into the annual budget cycle, requirements for the development review and approval and submission of the budget, and provide for you and for the public an overview of the documents you're approving. During Ms. Bartholomew's portion highlighting the final budget details, she will share with you an overview first of the projected resources or revenue and other assets, then of the expenditures, which are also called throughout these documents applications or requirements. Fiscal year 2026, also referred to as the fiscal year ending 2026, runs from July 1st of this year through June 30th of 2026. The final budget is our final opportunity to project the budget in advance of the fiscal year beginning on July 1. As you know, we are still at a point where this budget is based on layers of projections. Expenditures for our current fiscal year are not yet known, as this year is still in progress. So projections for current year expenditures are calculated. Student enrollment for next year is not yet known, so projections for enrollment are calculated. State education funding and other sources of revenue are also not yet known, so projections for next year's revenues are estimated. Any revenue changes that come out of legislative session will appear before you when we present the amended final budget in December. We also take into account the school budgets for next year, as we've utilized those projections to determine school allocations as well. No changes in the school budget projections since the tentative budget. The amended final budget we develop once the current fiscal year closeout processes are complete, and by that time we will have actual expenditures and better revenue projections. We will have projected expenditures based on audited actual expenditures from fiscal year 25, and we could calculate revenues based on information from the legislative session, as well as actual average daily enrollment from the first quarter of the school year. Excuse me. The amended final budget is required to be submitted before January 1, so by December 31st, to the Nevada Department of Taxation. And then after approval of the amended final budget, the district will implement that budget. The board will review and approve expenditures and transfers through June 30th of next year. And then we will present the audited actual information for fiscal year 26 in November of that year. So you can see how the annual budget and budget development and accounting cycles overlap, and how each year's budget and actuals inform the development of future budgets. A lot of overlap here. As a reminder, we just went through all this, but there are 4 primary requirements for the development of the budget. First, we have to prepare and document the information. That is then documented on required state budget forms. We then have to present those forms to the board for approval and then submit those forms to the Nevada Department of Taxation. Again, the fiscal year 2026 submission due dates are listed here for you. We had to submit tentative by mid-April. Final budget must be submitted by June 9th, and then again amended final by December 31st. In fulfilling the first requirement to prepare and document budget information, the team has prepared and documented projections for revenue and other resources, projected expenditures, and then a series of other required information such as in-process contracts and projected lobbying costs. That only applies to legislative years, which fiscal year 26 is not. And then we've reviewed all projections when moving from tentative budget to final budget. And again, we'll go through each of the changes between those 2 budgets as we get there. In fulfilling the second requirement to document the information on state budget forms, the Department of Taxation requires that we budget based on 2 fund types, governmental and proprietary funds, and we'll go over all of that. That if the ending fund balance is less than 4% of the actual previous year's expenditures for the general fund, we must include an explanation and a plan for the increase of that. We are nowhere near that low. We're well above that. Third, that we classify required revenue and expenditures using the provided forms and schedules. And then fourth, that we include an index listing the page number and description of each page arranged in a particular order. And that is how the reference material D has been laid out for you. This slide here provides for you a listing of the funds that we require or that we report in state forms. You'll see on the bottom left-hand corner of this slide, there's a reference to the state forms. We've included these to allow you to easily cross-reference the information in the actual forms, which is the thing you are approving today, with the overview that we're providing on the screen so that we can cross-reference between the 2. The state forms include the district's entire budget, and you'll find revenue and expenditure detail for each fund within the state forms. And real quick, I'll walk you through those forms again to orient you and anyone who happens to be watching to the information available there. So as you look to the state forms, you can find on the bottom left-hand side of most pages, the budget cycle, the fund, and the title of each document, schedule form on each page, with the remainder of the form usually consisting of the lists and tables of the actual budget information and calculations being submitted. So if we start off with reference material D, pages 1 through 3 are kind of introductory information. Pages 4 and 5 are Schedule AA. That is the highest level overview of the district's resources, followed by the district's expenditures or applications. And then everything on those 2 pages is presented in further detail, fund by fund, in Schedules B, C, and the other documents behind. So for example, on page 4, you can see the general fund at the top there. Those figures will coincide with the figures that are detailed on pages 6 through 16, which is Schedule B for the general fund. Beginning on page 17, you can see where the special education fund detail starts, the revenue followed by the expenditures, and so on and so on. And so all these state forms that are listed here on this slide are included there as reference D. Like I said, the only form that's listed here that's not included in the 26 final budget is the lobbying expense estimate, Schedule 30. That is because 26 is not a legislative year. So there are no projected lobbying expenses. Now, armed with that information, I will turn your attention over to Interim Chief Financial Officer Diane Bartholomew to share with you the fiscal year 2026 final budget details.
Good evening, trustees. Diane Bartholomew, interim CFO for the record. I will take you through the financial pieces of the budget in the remaining slides. So hopefully we'll go through quick. All right, so thank you. All right, so slide 14. So as Ms. Coyle mentioned earlier, you are seeing information for all the district's funds. This is the list of each fund with the FY 2026 budget amounts. The complete district budget is nearly $9.2 billion. All these funds are reflected in the state forms by revenue followed by expense. However, what we are highlighting tonight are our major operating funds of general fund, special education fund, and the weighted funds, which are noted in bold. There are some minor changes on this slide compared to tentative budget. We wanted to point out that item 2.02 in the agenda, narrative of changes, provides a nice summary for your reference, an easy reference to look up the changes. The remaining slides will provide more details, however. So the general fund at nearly $4 billion is the main operating account of the district and includes 4 main sources. State sources, which is from the State Education Fund and the Pupil-Centered Funding Plan. Local sources, which includes things like donations, tuition, local taxes, and interest income. Federal sources, which include federal impact aid, forest reserve monies, and Medicaid administration reimbursement. We just want to know, however, this is not federal grants. All right, and then lastly, other financing sources includes our medium-term bonding. So you can see that by far the largest source of general operating revenue is state sources. In fact, over 80% of general resources come from state sources. The other funding sources only account for the 20% remaining. Actually, you know what? Most of the state revenue is allocated right through the Pupil-Centered Funding Plan. PCFP legislation lays out both how the state allocates those funds to districts and to some extent how the districts in turn allocate those funds to schools. And there is no change on this slide from tentative budget. Slide 16, the special education budget is projected at $727 million. This amount includes revenue directly from state sources. This fund is also supported by other funds with a transfer from general supported, which includes the PCFP special education allocation. Also, the other funding includes a general fund transfer of an additional $188 million in order to provide all the necessary funding to support students with disabilities. There is a small increase here from tentative budget to account for transportation positions, which we transferred from general to special education to help support that program. This slide represents the weighted funding provided through the PCFP. Weighted funding provides additional state funding to schools for specific student populations, including English learners, gifted and talented, and at risk. In entirety, these funds total approximately $468 million, which includes a small portion of support from the general fund. The opening fund balance is unspent funds from the prior year, so we just want to note basically this is the school's carry forward for this area. And there is no change here from tentative budget. As the per pupil amounts from the PCFP are not yet allocated for the 25-27 biennium, these revenue amounts have little change from the prior year. Again, these state education funding resource projections are based on enrollment projections, last biennium funding, and current school year weighted fund eligibility. So there's no change on this slide from tentative budget. So we have gone through the resources or revenues of the budget. This slide is showing a summary of the fiscal year 2026 budgeted balanced budget of resources and expenditures being presented for the board's approval this evening. There are slight increases on this slide from tentative budget due to an increase in budgeted property tax resource projections as we have received updated projections from the Nevada Department of Taxation. So you will note there is a little bit of a change here from tentative budget. So now we'll transition to information on the expenditures of the budget. So as we mentioned, the general fund is the main source for the operation of the district. This data illustrates how the significant majority of fund supports position costs and purchases to maintain support to our schools. There's a slight decrease here from tentative due to the transportation transfer to special ed that we mentioned earlier. The transfer breakdown will also be shown on slide 23. So within the special education fund, we also see that most of the expenditures are projected to support staff positions, providing instruction, support, and transportation to students with disabilities in alignment with federal law. And to note the offset, there is a slight increase here from tentative budget due to that transfer we mentioned for transportation from general fund. Similar to the general and special education funds, a majority of weighted funds are consumed by salary and benefits to support pupils identified in the weighted categories. Just to note, the miscellaneous area here, as noted on the state forms, is property and other services. However, there is no property totals on the state forms, so this would only be other services, which is basically dues and fees. So, and there's no change on this slide from tentative budget. So one of the last elements of the state forms for approval by the board is the schedule of transfers. These are necessary to supplement those funds that need additional funding, for example, the special ed fund. Although the district does receive special ed, English learner, and GATE funding, transfers from general are still required to cover some of the costs in those areas. Again, a small change here in general fund and special education fund from tentative budget. Oh, and lastly, we have met the requirements and measures of financial health. We have a balanced budget. We have made sure our unassigned ending fund balance meets the two requirements of Nevada law and district regulation. So we present this final budget for your approval.
Thank you.
Take any questions?
And so we had already checked earlier if there was any public comment, and there wasn't, so I'll go straight to trustees for questions. Trustee Dominguez?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, team, for presenting. I do have some questions that I want to kind of go back to during our meeting that we had, and I think it's important for the public to hear this information. So I know in the media last year, we saw a lot going on with our budget, and I looked at the reference material you submitted. Is CCSD's budget balanced this year?
Yes, Madam President, Diane, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, Diane Bartholomew, for the record, yes, we do have a balanced budget. We need to submit a balanced budget per NRS, obviously. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to elaborate a little more on last fall.
So I was going to keep going. So last year's budget, are we balanced from last year's budget?
Yes, we were balanced.
And, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Are we in a deficit from was last year a deficit in reality?
No, we were, at no time were we in a deficit, right, for our budget. At the time that some of that communication went out, we were closing out our books from the prior year. We were making adjustments for school budgets. You know, it's always a give and take until we get the final, right? So, but at no time was the district in danger of being, or having a deficit budget.
Thank you. And then I know there were a lot of numbers thrown out. There was some big numbers, and then it kind of started getting smaller. Can you speak to just kind of where those, I know you mentioned projected, but that's a really big gap to project.
If I may, Diane Bartholomew, for the record, I know it seems like a large number, right? We were 20 million, we were 10 million, but honestly, in the scheme of things, right, with our budget, those numbers are actually a very good projection of a budget our size. I don't want to say that's inconsequential, but it is a small portion of our budget. And as I was mentioning, we were closing out our financials from the prior year, so we were still working on projecting our budget. In an effort to be transparent, I think things got,
Misled,
it was misleading, in my opinion. And
Thank you. And I appreciate the work your team has done. I know we've done a lot of work with changing your compliance processes and systems, and I appreciate the hard work of even our previous interim superintendent, and it's a lot of work that went into this, so I appreciate that, so thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question, if we can kind of quickly explain the difference between staffing count day and the student count day, because I know that's been a topic.
Hi there. So Diane Bartholomew, for the record. So yes, we do have a staffing day that we use to help our school principals to determine what their needs are going to be for their school year. However, so that's for the district, which happens usually in August before we open budgets, maybe a couple of weeks after school opens. But however, we also have an average daily enrollment count that is now done every quarter. I think it used to be yearly, but due to the needs of the districts, NDE or the state has changed that process. So on October 1st, there is a count day that they use as our funding, and they do that count day every quarter to update our funding.
Thank you for that. And then the other question I have, I saw under special revenue, we have Vegas PBS. And I know as a district, that's under us. What do you expect the changes would be with what's going on, federally with PBS?
Well, I'm phoning a friend.
Kelly Coelpel for the record. With all of the noise from the federal government related to all federal funding we receive, none of that has trickled down to us at this point. As far as we're concerned, for budgeting, it is still noise, and we've not yet received any direct impact to federal dollars.
Thank you for that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Straffigan?
Thank you for the comprehensive presentation. And I know that Trustee Dominguez mentioned that we had a meeting. We did have a training at the request of some trustees to really go a little bit deeper into understanding the scope of this budget. And I think it was highly beneficial. So I just want to publicly say that, yes, it was more time from all of us, but well spent, because of the fact that we are trying to grapple with these large numbers. My question is to get into the document D, on page 4. And it kind of is a follow-up to Trustee Zamora's question, was curious about, because I'm trying to watch things happening at the federal level. The Department of Agriculture does provide some funding for food service. Food service is a big expense, like I think is at $210 million. So how much, if at all, do we get from the federal government for food service? And I'm sorry to throw this on you, but some things have been happening recently at the federal, national level that I'm watching. So I'm curious, and it just, I want to know the potential impact for our students to be able to have school meals on a daily basis. Because a majority of our schools are 100% free and reduced lunch, and they do receive breakfast, lunch, and breakfast and lunch, pretty much.
Yeah. So Diane Bartholomew for the record. So just to clarify, so the 210 is actually their opening fund balance, right, on that chart. And it will show you all the way down on page 102 is where food service starts. And you'll notice, so I'm not sure if you're just looking for how much they spend or how much they receive in.
I wanted to know, potentially, it doesn't have to be an exact number, but how much we receive.
142 million, right? So you're on page 103.
Okay.
Trustees Esparza, Stafford, and Kelly Cole-Paul for the record. Do you see that number on 103? There is a category that says B, cash flows from non-capital, financing activities, and then federal reimbursements. About 9 lines from the top, 142 million in the very right-hand column. Wonderful.
See how much you're teaching us. And I think it's important that we have to know these things because we need to know and be prepared on potential gaps that could happen in the future. And I want the community to understand that. Like, that's the amount of money we're getting to feed our students on a day-to-day. Madam President, I'll defer. I have other questions, but I'll go to my colleagues.
Thank you. Trustee Barron?
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies, thank you very much for your presentation, and I also want to extend my thanks to your team. It puts a lot, hey, managing a budget of almost $4 billion takes a lot of talent, and it's almost like an art as much as it is a science. What I've come to respect from my time there at the State of North Vegas is what we have for an ending fund balance. And of course, we have right here. Could you maybe speak to the ending fund balance, what it is, what it represents, and how it might be taken as a relative barometer of our district's financial health?
Yes, so Diane Bartholomew for the record, good question. So because I don't think I actually spoke to it. So we have the 2 regulations, right? So our ending fund balance will be at for the district regulation, right? We need to maintain a 4% fund balance. And the regulation 3110 requires us to have a 2% unassigned ending fund balance based on our current year revenues. So that's where the calculation comes from, and we are at 4.25%. Does that answer?
And I guess the second part, could you kind of like speak a little bit to how that relates, what the public can gather from that ending fund balance where we're at? Again, kind of like as a barometer, and that we show stability. I guess I'm kind of answering it for you, but I'd like you to maybe just chime in and what the public can expect to gather. I know just 2%, 4.25. That people who are watching, they may not understand, but to me, that's music to my ears. But maybe you could explain how that's actually a kind of a good thing.
Trustee Barone, if I could jump in, Kelly Cole-Paul for the record. There's also an upper limit to the ending fund balance where if we get above a 16.6%, some of that money goes back to the state. So there's an upper limit we don't want to get to also. But to that end, our goal is to invest the funds into the students in front of us as best we can. But what we want to do is balance between investing every dollar and reserving some that is not assigned to any particular cost or projected cost, which is what unassigned ending fund balance means, just in case something crazy happens and we need to cover an emergency. This is exactly what came to pass in the last fiscal year, where we did not have a deficit because we had a healthy ending fund balance. We adjusted the ending fund balance down. We spent the ending fund balance down, and we've budgeted it back up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Stevens?
Thank you so much for this presentation. My question may echo a little bit of what Trustee Barone just mentioned, but when we understand that the majority of our resources come from the state, and then we're in session right now, we're hearing a lot of things, and I'm hearing from the community. There's a little nervousness, right? You hear on one side, education is the big priority, right? But the second thing you'll hear right after that is, we have no money. So when we think about that in terms of the upcoming funding, should the state provide less than maybe they have in the past? Has the district budgeted in a buffer, or would you say maybe conservatively budgeted these numbers so that there is no shortfall should something like that happen?
So Diane Bartholomew for the record. So yes, of course, we try to budget as conservatively as we can, still keeping in mind that we need to keep a certain percentage, through 388G, we need to be able to provide for our students, right? So, but yes, as I was mentioning in the slide deck, we've stayed with our revenue resources that we had from the prior year, so we didn't budget in anything extra, waiting to see. But that being said, we do have some things coming in, right? Our PERS increase, we still have health care to deal with. We're trying to provide for our staff, so there are some things that we're going to still need to balance. We're still waiting for that legislation to drop with our funding for sure. Even though we have gotten some hints, but and all that will be reflected in AFB. Yeah.
Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Trustee Stevens, for asking my first question there. So that was the fun question, our mitigation, not knowing what's going to happen. I think the key word here tonight is projections, and I know that the public is asking questions about that and asking about the tentative budget, the final budget, how does it change, et cetera. I had one question that kind of was already answered during our briefing, and I want to reiterate what my colleague said, that the extra training that we received, and also with Ms. King assisting with that, was really effective, and I think it really assisted us. So I'm looking at, our reference on 2.02D on page 3. I have a question from a constituent asking for a little bit of enhanced discussion about the projected enrollment, and was this provided from zoning and demographics, or is it a modified projected enrollment? I knew you'd love this question, Diane.
Good question, Diane Bartholomew for the record. So correct, yes, we utilize our demographics department for our enrollment, and they do a really good job. I know it doesn't, they're always like within a very small percentage of, off. So yes, we do use their projections.
Okay. That's kind of the answer I gave, but you just sound so much more authoritative, so I thought it'd be better coming from you guys. Thank you so much. And the other question was just about what Trustee Stevens had asked, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Straffigan?
I think some of the misconception too, when the year came about and there was questioning about the teachers' increase in their salary. Can you give us just an indication of, we are in potential negotiation with that, and so what is the security of what this budget is projected to be, so that we don't get in that space again?
So Diane Bartholomew for the record, well, you're asking a good question, right? We're not sure, so we are waiting for that funding bill to drop. We're waiting to close out FY25, so that'll help tell our picture of what, where we'll be. We have built in some items in our average salary that went out to schools when budgets opened, but we didn't budget for everything just because we weren't really able to, right? We're using our resources from the prior year. So we're waiting for some numbers to come in, and you want to add?
Kelly Cole-Paul for the record. For example, we budgeted, when we built school budgets, for step and column advancements, which are included in the negotiated agreement now, for example, but we did not include a COLA, which is not negotiated, stuff like that. So we included what we could be relatively confident in conservatively.
And again, I think I just want to echo from fellow trustees the difference of the process, and also including the building leaders with having a space and opportunity to provide that input and to project what could potentially be things that we're not anticipating. So just a big kudos again, and I think we're learning through all of those lessons learned from the past. And I know, Madam President, we're going to continue discussion, but I'd love to make a motion when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you. Trustee Henry?
Thank you both so much for your presentation and also for the trainings that we did receive. It gave me a better understanding of our operations and our budget, so I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure I took notes. I just wanted to make sure that I heard you say, Ms. Bartholomew, that we were never operating in a deficit.
Correct. We were not.
After all of the things, so I know that this was during the time that some of us were campaigning, and so we weren't sure. So I just wanted to, it's not really even a question, but I just wanted to say that I wonder if our CFO was terminated prematurely, knowing this information now. But you don't have to answer that.
Yeah, we will not. I'm going to ask my question. So I equally ditto the acknowledgement of the hard work that you guys have put in, the entire team, the late nights, the weekends, to be able to make this come forth. And we as a team continue to receive training. We will, because we need to be thoroughly equipped in order for us to be able to answer the questions without phoning a friend. And so I feel really confident about the team to do that. And I'm really grateful that Trustee Stevens and Trustee Esparza-Stroffagan are on the debt management and the bond oversight, because we need to plan for the future and we need to be in great financial health in order to for future bonding. So my question has to do on page 15 of 25. And so my question, or I think that one was it. I believe you mentioned Medicaid reimbursement. Can you expand on that for me? What does that mean?
Oh, yes, Diane Bartholomew for the record. So we do, through our Student Services Division, through SSD, get reimbursed from Medicaid for some of our students with whatever service that they get provided. So because we have an area in our department to do the admin work, I would say that is the admin piece of that work.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Would you say that we are capturing all the reimbursement dollars for Medicaid when it comes to our students? If you would give us a percentage, what would that be?
I can get that information.
Okay. My second question has to do with, you really helped us to understand that these are projections, that we're waiting for numbers to come in order for us to actually present a budget. The law requires us to call this the final budget, but there's a lot of projections. So now I understand that in a better way. My question is, once the finance team receives those numbers for actuals, what is the process to train the principals? Because there might be adjustments, right? Either up or down. And we have a process to train them now, and you guys have written the book where you can go to, and there is one-on-one assistance for the principals, but what happens after, once the actual numbers come in?
Kelly Kowal-Paul for the record. I almost messed it up myself. Actually, this week, Diane and I, Ms. Bartholomew and I are beginning the school budget development process that we established in January, for the January budgets. So all of that work will begin, beginning this week and beyond, all the way through the fall. When the final revenue numbers come in from the legislation, we will build those numbers into the calculations that we already have shells for. We just have to fill in the numbers and do the math. It sounds really simple. It's complex math, but it's doable, obviously. And then we will run through that same cycle where we are confirming and reviewing and confirming all of the inputs to each step in the process with a cross-functional team. We will pull principals together to run through any changes we've made, make sure that they understand their budgets even further. We gave the principals a more in-depth budget training in January than they had received in the past as well. Although there still is some room there. We're starting to get questions that we answered in January. So we'll definitely need to revisit some things and then build upon that knowledge that they're continuing to gain. What's also coming out as a result of that is, in addition to some of those questions that we answered in January, the principals are now able to understand better to the point where they are able to ask more informed questions that will lead to more collaborative conversations as we develop the budgets in future cycles. Most significant changes we will not want to implement in the fall because we won't want to disrupt school programs in place for the beginning of the school year that will have been in place already. But especially as we move into January budgets for next year, we'll be able to make any significant changes that we come across. I also want to take the opportunity, if I may, to remind you that the amended final budget, although it's based on fewer layers of projections, will still be a projection. Nothing will be actual until we do the financials after the end of the fiscal year.
Got it. And then my last question is, one of the revelations that I got was that we have 374 schools with leaders who are doing their own budgeting. And when I soaked that in, it was very alarming for me because they were getting PhD in finance on how to make, with the information that you were feeding them. So my question is, on AB 469, when it was passed, is there a continued working group to still see if what the intention of the legislation actually has had a positive impact? Is there a working group for that?
Kelly Kowal-Paul, for the record, not to my knowledge, although there has been some activity read into the legislative record this afternoon.
Okay.
So that conversation will surely start up again.
Okay, thank you so much. Trustee Henry, did you have anything else? No? Trustee Cavazos?
I was just going to make a second to the motion.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Stroffagan?
Are you
Oh,
gonna-
yes, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Okay, I
yes.
was waiting, following Robert's rules. Okay, here we go. Madam President, I'd like to make a motion for item 2.02 to accept the fiscal year 2026 final budget as presented.
Thank you. Trustee Cavazos?
And I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Please cast your votes. That motion passes 7-0. We're going to go ahead and move to item number 3, upcoming meeting announcements. The next meeting of the Board of Trustees is Wednesday, June 4th, 2025 at 4 p.m. here in the boardroom. Now we're going to move to item 4.01, public comment on items not listed as agenda items on the agenda. Is there anyone that has not completed a public speaker card as of yet? Okay, we have one in the back. While we're waiting for that, I'd like to invite Ms. Brittany Seeger to come up and Ms. Amy Peterson as well. We have 2 mics, so if you'd like to, one here on my right and one here on my left.
Do I just start talking?
And I'll start in a second. Are you Brittany?
I'm Brittany.
Brittany, okay, so hold on, I just want to make sure we get the public comment card from our last participant. Okay, with that, I'm going to close our public comment. We do have speakers, and so Ms. Seeger, if you can please proceed.
My name is Brittany Seeger, and I'm speaking to you not only as a concerned parent, but as someone who hopes to be heard. As a mother in such a large district, it can often feel overwhelming and discouraging to try to advocate for your child and feel like no one is listening. Since my son Hudson was in second grade, I've had strong concerns that he would benefit from being placed in a grade below. I voiced these concerns to school administrators in both third and fifth grade, only to be dismissed each time. As his mother, this was heartbreaking. I felt powerless in decisions that directly affect my child's well-being. After his 8th grade year at Leavitt Middle School, I continued to feel strongly that a grade adjustment was the right path for him. With sinking test scores, letters of retention concerns, and struggling to keep up, I communicated clearly with his 8th grade principal of my plans. I followed district protocol by filing an intent to homeschool with CCSD in order to complete private homeschool program. However, I went to register him at Centennial High School. I was told he would be placed directly in 10th grade, skipping 9th entirely. My son is only 14 years old, and entering 9th grade at his age is not only appropriate, it's the norm. Graduating at 18 is perfectly reasonable and typical timeline, and there's no need to rush or push him ahead before he's ready. I feel deeply disappointed by the lack of communication and support from the district. While I made every effort to be transparent and proactive, there has been no acknowledgement or consideration of my child's unique circumstances. Now he's being penalized for a situation beyond his control, and that's simply not fair. Obviously, no parent would put their child in this situation. I urge you to consider the importance of evaluating students on a case-by-case. Every child is different, and what works for one may not work for another. With such a large and centralized district, taking autonomy away from individual principals makes it even harder to respond to students' real needs. As we've heard over and over from the district, students first. Yes, students first. Let's let actions speak louder than words and actually put students first. Our children deserve more than a system that simply pushes them through. They deserve opportunities to thrive, and they deserve solutions that support and not hinder their growth. Thank you for your time in considering my requests to review cases like my son's individually with care and compassion.
Thank you, Ms. Seeger. Ms. Amy, if you please proceed, and after her, Christine Benson.
Hi, my name is Amy Peterson. Recently, we received an open letter to CCSD from our new superintendent. I'm sure you're familiar with this letter, but let me read you a few statements that stand out. Together, we will work towards a bold shared vision, one rooted in opportunity, excellence, and unwavering belief in the potential of every student. Every child deserves a chance to rise. The road ahead will require trust, courage, and commitment, but I am optimistic because I know that when we stand united, we are unstoppable. Together, we will rebuild trust, restore confidence, build upon our current successes, and rise to meet this moment with purpose. To our students, you are the reason we do this work. To our families, your partnership is essential. I look forward to listening deeply with intention. We'll be engaging in honest conversations, shaping a shared vision, and setting clear possibilities. I welcome your voice. I welcome your ideas. Most of all, I welcome your partnership. I could quote each one of you stating similar shared visions. I've read your interviews, but I only have 3 minutes. I have no doubt you're fully aware of what you have said. We as parents know and feel that these statements are a facade. Superintendent, I see no renewed commitment. Anyone willing to talk and listen has their hands tied when it comes to making a decision, and anyone who can make a decision won't talk to you. You wonder why enrollment is down and projected enrollment for the upcoming year is off. It is because no one has faith in CCSD, and they have sought after better education options. If the board is truly for the students, which they should be, then students should be at every decision, not politics, not bureaucracy, and certainly not self-preservation. We are tired of the slogans. We need leadership that walks the talk. It's time for the school board to prove that they are here for each individual student, not just say it. CCSD is failing when it comes to Hudson. I can only hope you will reflect and do better. Our students deserve it.
Thank you. Ms. Christina? And
Yes,
then
I'm
Mr. Jordan Seeger. Please proceed.
Okay, I'm Christine Benson, and I have been involved in the Clark County School District. I'm a graduate of Western High School. I sent 4 kids through public school, And if you would have ever told me that I would be before this board advocating for my grandson and my daughter and her husband to be able to make a decision as to Hudson's placement in school, I would not have believed it. Anybody that I tell the situation is like, no, that's not right. Brittany's had concern for years with Hudson, and she went to 3rd grade. They told her, no, he'll be okay. Hudson wasn't okay. She went to 5th grade, and they told her the same thing. No, he'll be okay. In 8th grade, when she got retention letters and his test scores he was no longer proficient, she went to the principal, presented her plan, and was not told anything. It's like you guys have a big secret that you're like trying to keep silent. If the principal had said to her, that won't work, he'll have to still do to 10th grade, she would not have done it. Since we've been in this, then it was like, okay, the registrar will make the decision. Then it's not the registrar that's going to make the decision, it's the principal that's going to make the decision. So they met with the principal. Hudson is not trying to stay back for any sports. They made a thing with the principal. Don't let him play any sports in his 9th grade year. He needs this for his emotional and his academic thing in order to prepare him to succeed in the future. So the principal took that, and then the next thing you know, the principal's right to make that decision has been taken away. I've talked to several people. I've talked to Lydia. I've called people. Everybody will talk to you, but I have no idea who makes this decision or why. It's not a matter that you don't want to send him into 4th grade, to 4 years of high school, because I said, how can he in 9th grade, he's had no 9th grade credits, no 9th grade school. You want him, where he's not even proficient now, to start 10th grade? What if he can't make it? And so, you know what the thing was? Well, he can be a 5th year senior. How much sense does that make that we're trying to keep this boy from producing and having a good thing? We're not asking for special treatment. We're just simply asking for a process that respects parents' input and considers what is best for the child in these situations. I know you have a lot, but the child is the number one. You all agree with that? You talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope that this will touch your hearts and not your deaf ears. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jordan, and then Scott Johnson.
I think it's clear my family here is in a different situation than probably a lot of you have dealt with similar other people in situations. Those people aren't here today. In fact, we've talked to a lot of them, the ones that you're trying to punish, the people that you're trying to say, that's not the way we want to go about it. And the reason they're not here is because they've signed up for private school now. They're going into the 9th grade in private school. They're going to stay in homeschool. I actually just got confirmation as well that if you're in 9th grade in homeschool, guess what you can do? You can still play sports. Go figure. All these kids that you're trying to punish aren't getting punished. Instead, my son, who legitimately has struggled this whole time, my mother-in-law, Christy, mentioned about talking to people. I have spoken to people on this board. I've spoken to, I don't know, 30 superintendents. I didn't even know we had that many superintendents, but there's a lot of them. All kind people. Everybody's a kind person. Ms. Dominguez was spectacular. She probably listened to me an hour longer than she ever wanted to. Great people that can do nothing. Every single person I have posed the same question to, after sharing my son's personal struggles with school, his test scores, which I know we only look at grades as your only thing, but grades, even the own principal and staff teachers pretend that grades aren't even real in our school district because you just retake the test, just keep retaking it, just do the homework over and over again, and then the parents, the teachers will eventually, you'll get a grade good enough, like a D, that you can pass through. So grades are going to be good enough. I've talked to and I've posed the same question to all of the people that I've spoken to, many of them. Do you believe that it is in best interest of my son to do 3 years of school instead of 4? And because they all get paid by the school district, which I understand, I have a job, I work for a corporation that makes me, actually they don't make me do anything, I do exactly what I want to do, but they have policies and procedures. Every single one of them would not answer the question. In fact, all of them, every single one of them said, We're going to help your son do everything we can. The same thing they told my wife in 3rd grade, the same thing they told her in 5th grade, the same thing they told her in 7th, 8th grade. We're going to help. And we're still in the same situation we're in, except for now, he's missed a year of that education, of that growth, that opportunity to become great. And he wasn't sitting out playing baseball, learning how to pick up balls and throw them to first base better and faster that you guys want to keep those kids out of. He's been working. My son had a job, a part-time job. He's woken up every morning with me to stay diligent in his routines. He's had a focused schedule to get school done. And now, decisions we've made to take that responsibility out of the principal's hands is punishing my son, but it's not punishing all those kids. It's not holding them back from becoming MLB players or whatever other things they want to be. It's just only hurting my son, and I'm sure others as well.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
All right. Good evening, CCSD School Board. My name is Scott Johnson, a teacher at Chaparral High School. I'm here to address a critical issue, administrator accountability. CCSD faces a severe teacher shortage, and failing to hold administrators accountable for mistreatment worsens the crisis. Administrators must face consequences, not transfers for bad behavior. I've heard countless stories of administrators abusing, bullying, mismanaging funds, and lying, yet nothing was done. Staff and families fled school to escape abuse, exacerbating our shortage as teachers leave. Moving toxic administrators doesn't solve the problem. It allows them to harm a new school. CCSD needs to comply with state and federal laws concerning harassment, bullying, and targeting of whistleblowers. The issues we have brought to this board previously need to be addressed. We need leaders who inspire us, not push us out. By enforcing accountability, following district regulations, state and federal law, CCSD can foster an environment that retains educator and sports students. We need change. CCSD students and employees deserve better. Please, we need your help. As long as I've been in this district, it's just been getting worse. This is my 5th year teaching, and every year it's gotten worse and worse and worse. We have less and less teachers. The solution's always, we'll hire more teachers, but they don't stay. I remember as I was a teacher at I think I was 4 years in, I was like, wow, I have more seniority than 20% of the people in the district, which tells me that the turnover rate in this district is terrible. The teachers need to be treated well. The teachers that need to be treated well so they can treat those kids well. How are we going to get a brand new teachers? They're just learning how to do it. They're not the best teachers in the world. They're learning. So please, deal with these administrators that are harming our teachers. Don't just sweep things under the rug. We've been working at this for months for an administrator. It's been doing horrid things. And the answer is crickets, nothing. You're nothing. So please, we need your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Danielle Carter and Kevin.
Good evening, trustees and superintendent. My name is Danielle Carter. I speak on behalf of parents, staff, and students of Chaparral High School who have raised concerns for over a year through statements, letters, and petitions. Our message is clear. Chaparral deserves better. The current administration has failed to uplift our students, many of whom are Black and Latino. Students are often treated as insignificant, their potential overlooked, which fuels low expectations and demands the school's reputation. We urge you to end the practice of reassigning problematic administrators to other schools, as this only spreads harm to more students and staff. Administrators must be held accountable for their failures. Instead, we ask for urgent action to address the issue by demoting the administrator to a teacher or learning strategist role, preventing further harm to our staff and students. We've been ignored for months, and now it's time to act. We call on you to empower our staff and students to thrive, transforming Chaparral into an exceptional school it can be. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Kevin? And then to close this out, Ms. Erica.
Good evening, CCSD School Board. My name is Kevin Bitsko, and I am a former computer technician at Chaparral High School. I'm here to speak out on Tricia Killinois for mismanagement of funds and Crystal Cummings, who I made aware of this mismanagement, but she stood idly by and did nothing. Even after collecting the prices of the funds that were mismanaged that she personally asked me for, she still did nothing. Around the end of the 22-23 school year, Tricia ordered around 30 MetaQuest VR headsets to be used in classrooms, each coming in at about $199 per device, along with accessories like a head strap and cases for each. She also ordered a VR cart to put the devices in. The biggest issue here is that she did not consult with the computer technicians if they would work at our site and just order them on her own will and then told us about it. I was concerned because those devices connect to a Facebook server, which is already blocked at the district level. I had a feeling they would not connect, which they ended up not working on our network and have now become useless and just sit in our back room. I even got with our networking department to try to help, but to no avail, and they told me it was because of the Facebook servers it connects to. I tried looking for other options, such as Class VR, that work great in classrooms, and when I brought it up to her, she coldly brushed it aside and did not want to pursue that option. She also ordered at least 50 color printers without consulting us, when we usually only order a maximum of about 15 color printers per school year. The reason we do this is because the cost of the toner is very expensive, and to buy the full set would just cost about the same amount of the printer itself, which is around $250 to $300 on SAP. I had to gut color printers brand new in the boxes for toner when we began to run low on it, since we were having trouble getting more color toner. Usually, color printers are given to APs, their assistants, and whoever else the principal approves. These are things I noticed when it came to Tricia mismanaging funds and just ordering things on a whim without consulting us. I was targeted by Crystal Cummings due to a false allegation and was forced to resign and not given the opportunity to transfer to another department. I never received a call from HR or anything to sign regarding my resignation and was personally called by Crystal given two options: to be fired or resign. I asked the board to launch a formal investigation into Crystal Cummings for her silence in the mismanagement of funds and the handling of my resignation from the district, as I would love to have my job as a computer technician back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Erica?
Good evening, President Bustamante, members of the board, and Superintendent Ebert. Erica Nungary for the record. I proudly serve as an education support professional. Tonight I speak for myself and for the thousands of support professionals represented by ESCA, the nation's largest recognized local education support staff union. I'm deeply disappointed that Clark County School District supported AB 398, a bill that claims to address school staffing shortages, but deliberately leaves out education support professionals. By backing this bill without insisting on including the staff who keep your schools running, the district sent a message, intentional or not, that our work is invisible. We are the clerks enrolling students, the bus drivers ensuring safe arrivals, the custodians sanitizing campuses, and special education aides providing critical classroom support. To support AB 398 as written is to endorse a solution that excludes those whose labor makes instruction possible. When the nation's largest ESP local is in your district and you choose not to advocate for inclusion, it reflects a systematic failure to honor the workforce you depend on. I urge you to issue a public correction of your support and demand that legislation amend AB 398 to include support professionals. The district cannot claim to support equity while standing silent as ESPs are written out of policy. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment. I just want to thank each trustee. This was a special board meeting, so thank you for your sacrifices. And I know that graduations have already started, and it is our honor and our responsibility to be at the graduations, and so good luck. Wear comfortable shoes. I will entertain a motion now by a trustee to adjourn the meeting. And happy birthday to our trustees that are celebrating their birthdays in the month of May. Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second, Trustee Biassadi?
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Can you please cast your votes? That motion passes 7-0. The time is 6:04. Thank you.